Well, a promise was made, and it shall be kept. It's time for us to start going through this big, long list of stuff that we have to do to create a character. Hello, and thank you all for joining us again here today on Hudson's County for another TTRPG Talk. This video series takes a look at tabletop role-playing games and related materials, makes suggestions for your own world building and game design. Today we're going to be taking a look, as you can see, at Artesia. This is the game that we recently took a look at all the mechanics and stuff. However, one thing that I mentioned in that video was that this is another application of what I call the Lifepath system, in part because this is the game that introduced me to that specific terminology of a life path system, because this utilizes the life path system that was used, a modified version of the life path system that was used in Cyberpunk 2020 and Mekton, which you might recognize as being our Talsorian Games. So we are going to go ahead and kind of just jump into this. One thing I do want to go ahead and note real quick before we get started in earnest is that over here, over here above me, this character sheet right here, this is a fillable character sheet that was created by a character sheet connoisseur who goes on the internet by the name of Mr. Gone. They seem to specialize primarily in character sheets primarily focused on things like World of Darkness games and stuff like that. However, they do have a long list of different other games, including this. They have both this two-page interactive version, which is the version that you can find actually in the book, in the back, and right here in the middle. As you can see, it's pretty much the same. This, of course, is not fillable, right? But also they have an extended 8-page version, which I'm not 100% sure where it came from, but it spreads a lot of the stuff out into many, many further pages, which, as you can see, there is a lot to fill in, and some of these are honestly not big enough. They really could use some more space. So, it's good that there is a larger version of this. However, we are going to be utilizing this short version to try to maximize how much I can get on the screen at once. So here we go. Here on page 133, it is time for us to get started. As it says, of course, this is the life path system. It starts off with a basic description on exactly how this is going to work, and you can see there's that checklist right there. It is, as you can note, a very long checklist. However, I also have a sort of version written out in prose here that I had originally created back and front. This is missing a lot of stuff that I had actually originally had stuck into it, that I created to help out my friends when we were first trying to play this game, back when it first came out, like back in the middle to late 2000s. Anyway, dating myself. Anyway, yeah, we're going to be completely randomizing this just to kind of show you all the basic process of the system, or at least as randomized as you can get with Artesia. Obviously, there's a lot of rolling tables at every single step of the process, but there are certain things that you just have to essentially determine on your own through decisions and like where to spend points and stuff like that. So the first step is that we need to determine basically the culture and social class of our character and their families and our parents and all of that stuff. So the first thing that we need to do actually is not that. We are in this page going to be rolling for our culture, but actually the very first thing that we need to do is our characteristics over here are at the beginning of the life path system. Each of our characters' characteristics are actually going to start at 5. So I will go through real quick and go ahead and put that in for each of these. Of course, each of these will be going up and down. The absolute maximum that they can become is 10 because that's the max that you can put in any stat. The lowest they could potentially be is a 1 because no stats are allowed to drop below 0 in character creation, because if they drop to 0, then you're dead. And they wanted to create, this is not Traveler. Our character can't die during the creation in the life path system. Whenever we're getting training points, those are those points that we can use to buy skills and stuff. Whenever we're getting our training points, when we're actually going through the actual life path system, yeah, while we get those points, we can spend them into whatever skills our occupation at the time is giving us, but also we can spend them into any of the quote unquote everyman skills that you can, all of which you can actually see here already written on our character sheet. So these are pretty basic stuff that basically everybody and most cultures, at least in this world, have at least a moderate amount of training in. Everybody would at least know probably a little bit. We don't start with any ranks in these skills, but we can buy points, use our points to buy ranks in these skills at any time. We don't have to limit, we are not limited in buying these skills. We are also going to be getting some everyman skills from our culture, whatever that one is. That highlights the specific elements that this particular culture really strongly embraces. So like one of them might be deception, another one might be art. There's lots of different things. We will go ahead and roll our culture just to see what we are going to be starting with. We have over here, there's 5 cultures that in the base sort of Artesia game you can pick from. There were, I know, plans to expand the background cultures to other regions in the world, the known world that is included in the game. Real quick, just to give you all a basic idea of exactly what it is we're looking at here. Our character can potentially come from any of these kingdoms here, or this outer, like sort of highlands area, which is called Daraja. So our character might come from Daraja, or our character might come from the 4 major cultural groups that exist in these kingdoms down here. All right, so we've hopped back over to the table. Let's go ahead and roll. Most likely we're going to be Arthurian, Danian, or Darajian. Whoops. Because the other 2 are generally smaller cultural groups. So here we go. All right, I rolled a 6, which means we are Danian. Okay, yeah. So I've noted here that our culture is Danian. So the next thing that we'll need to do is we'll need to go ahead and hop over to the cultural thing about them. So here we have the Danians. It says that they're primarily from the Western Middle Kingdoms and some little pieces of the Eastern Kingdoms. They apparently were the original inhabitants of a lot of the lowlands and what is now the lands next to the Middle Kingdoms. They're generally considered to be somewhat more languid in their temperament to a lot of their neighbors, and they have a more formal and political and social structures than some of their other neighbors as well. They're also generally more freewheeling, talkative, social, and they are very dedicated to language, words, and wordplay. So you can tell that in the fact that a lot of their everyman skills embrace language. So we have storytelling, composition, singing, and then of course they can embrace one of 2 different sorts of common languages, or sorry, religions, those being Divine King or Yeren. I'm not going to go into the specifics of the religions right now. I think I'm going to have my character specialize come from a sort of Yeren background. I'm going to go ahead and note down each of the everyman skills that we have here. So the next step that we need to do is we need to try to describe exactly what the specific circumstances of our birth are, because those will heavily influence pretty much everything moving forward. So birthplace will be going right here. So up here on this table here, it states these are the different places that most people who are born in a Danian culture would probably be coming from. going from like rural sorts of hill forts all the way up to like basically being born in the king's the king's castle, or at least one of the king's castles. So here we go. I rolled a 6, which means we were probably born in a small town, which is this year, and it does not apply any modifier to our social level. So that's actually pretty good because that'll make things a little simpler for us. So I will note that down here, and I will also note a 0 because we are not going to be adding or subtracting anything from our social level for that. All right. Um, the next step that we need to go ahead and do before we start kind of diving into the specifics of our parents and all of that is we need to um, go ahead and just do a quick D10 roll just to see if our starting circumstances are weird in any way. So I will go ahead and roll that. Oh, yeah, roll that real quick. And I rolled an 8, which means basically nothing. We just keep going on through the system the way it is. If we had rolled a 10, then we would actually have been going over here to the unusual family situation table. Like, maybe we were abandoned and raised as a foundling. Our parents sent us to live with relatives and we haven't seen them in like forever. Our parents came from a different place, have been secretly living under this culture when actually they're originally from another one, stuff like that. So just to provide some extra unusual background stuff going on. So yes, and then we need to go ahead and roll for our social level now that we've determined that. So we are going to roll another d10. Then we would be adding our modifier. Because we don't have a modifier because of our small town, that means that our social level will be somewhere between a 1 and a 10. And I rolled an 8, so our social level is actually pretty decent. So I will note that down here under our parents' social level, because that could potentially change. Now, it is possible that based on our parents, they might end up actually not being at the same social level, at least initially, but they're supposed to be kind of at the same. So let's go ahead and head back down here to our culture. Now on the next page for our culture, you will note here that we have the social level here that determines the occupations that our parents originally would have come from. We also have a lineage table, which we'll be rolling on in a second, a bunch of names that are specific to that culture, and then down here, cultural items. We will, if we gain a special cultural item during the course of our events on our life path, we potentially might get one of these, basically. So since we did roll an 8 for our parent social level, we're going to be rolling here on the lettered section of the social class table. So, they might be a merchant, a physician healer, a priest, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and check. All right, for the first one, we rolled a 1. So this would be for our mother, which actually tells us to roll on the artisan table. So I will roll up here. And I rolled a 7. So innkeeper. So unusually, our mother's occupation. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong spot. I need to be over here. There we go. Our mother's occupation is an innkeeper. Presumably, a very lucrative one. So we're going to go ahead and roll real quick for our father. We're going to be rolling here on the lettered section of the table. Sorry, I just dropped my die. We're going to be rolling here on the lettered section of the table, and I just rolled a 3, which here is the bard. Now, one thing I will go ahead and note is that in the Artesia setting, some of the in sort of like the base our setting, some of these professions are somewhat sexist, are somewhat sexually segregated due to a sort of sexism in the culture. So those that are here are emboldened. So for example, you'll note here on the artisan when I rolled innkeeper for our mother, it's emboldened because presumably in this culture, innkeepers, just like a lot of other medieval cultures, innkeepers were typically women. Same for the midwife, typically a woman. A householder or an entertainer or courtesan, typically a woman. Up here for our father, the bard, bards in this culture are typically men. Same with merchants and physicians, healers, right? A lot of these other cultures, a lot of these other professions that aren't bolded are generally equal when it comes to gender, which, so for example, sailors, scouts, warriors, hunters, all of these are generally traders, all of these are generally gender neutral, but for some reason in this culture, some are generally uh, uh, be, they might have potentially experienced some segregation or be generally discouraged from having that particular profession. Um, I typically have not actually played it that way, but of course that all depends on the specifics of what your gaming group would like to do, how closely you want to follow the actual canon of the cultures in the game itself. Okay, so now we have rolled the occupations for our, sorry, I'm taking a look at my list so that I remember what all I'm supposed to do. So now that we've rolled our parents' occupations, um, we need to go ahead and determine their lineages. Again, as I mentioned, we'll be rolling for our mother and for our father. Um, and the basic idea behind this is that the lineage or the ancestry of our character might potentially influence certain things about them. Like, for example, if you have a great hero in your past, in your family's past, then that might, hearing stories about this person, or they might have some physical characteristics that have passed down genetically to you. Um, so for this, we're actually going to need to roll a d20, which I forgot about. So if you'll just give me one moment, I need to actually get one out. So I now have our d20, and we are going to go ahead and roll the lineage first for our mother and then for our father. Now, once we roll those lineages on that little table there on the top, what we're actually going to need to do is then go to the appendix at the end of the book, Appendix A, which contains a lot of the specific lineage tables based on, because there are a large number of options, and then those of course connect to the many different rolling tables on their own. So yeah. So I rolled a 2 for our mother, so she comes from a Darajan lineage, and our father, I rolled a 9, which means that they're Danian. Now, keep in mind, of course, this doesn't mean like their culture versus your culture. This is just lineage. So this is like, grandparents, great grandparents, great 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 grandparents, so on and so forth down the line. So again, we need to go down to Appendix A, which is actually a very large appendix. Here we go. All right. So the first thing we need to do is we need to roll a d10. You can see this is actually a 2-page chart. So we need to roll a d10 to determine which chunk we need to roll from. I mean, obviously, if we roll a 1 or a 5, we have this first one at the top here, and then that's it. But if we roll any of the other ones, that means we're descended from some sort of hero, and a line of heroes, so we need to determine which one it is. Okay, so for our first one, I rolled a 6, and for our second one, I rolled a 1. So, that means we're from an archaic hero line. So this is like super ancient. Anyway, 6-1, that's Dara here. It says here that she was the first queen of the Harath-Eduins, the builder of Darades, which is like a major citadel in the sort of region that the Darajan live in. The binder of Yelf and a binder of the Black Hunter. She was slain by Thula, who I believe is also somewhere on this table. So anyway, because of this, that means that we get +1 to appearance, technique, will, imagination, presence, conviction, and wisdom. So we get a +1 to all of these. Here it is. Here's the Danian table. They have much fewer historical. Well, that was too far. They have fewer historical folks to potentially be rolling from, partly because the legends for them are not as well developed, at least in the world of the game. So here we go. Yes. All right. Anyway, I rolled a 6, so our father is just of common Danian lineage. So because of that, we gain here a -1 to our stamina. However, we gain a +1 to presence and wisdom. So presence and wisdom are upgraded to 7. All right, so that is the lineage of our parents. One thing that's important to note that the book explains actually on this page here is that should your character later on potentially have any children of your own, it states that whatever lineage you will pass on will be the more powerful of the two bloodlines from both of your parents. So in this particular case, this character would be passing on the bloodline of Dara, right? Their Darajan bloodline, their lineage, as opposed to the Danian one. So in the next step, there are some things that we need to take a look at, and that would be our birth sign. So in this particular game, birth signs and omens are particularly important. So we need to roll to determine exactly. And I forgot to grab a roll d12, so I will do that real quick as I talk. So one thing that's important to note is that, like I said, birth signs, birth omens, divination style of that kind of style is extremely important. So we need to go ahead and roll. We're going to be rolling a d12 to figure out which of the 12 star signs influenced our birth, and then of course roll a d10 to determine how strong it was at the time. On the next page, there is actually a calendar based on this world's year and exactly which periods are influenced by the star sign. If we wanted to even basically pick our character's birthday, if we wanted to be that specific, not that we have to. So yes, let's go ahead and roll. And I rolled a 4, which is the scarab. So our birth sign is the scarab. So again, now we need to roll a d10 to determine how strong of an influence it was. I rolled a 1. So we rolled a 1. It has a weak influence, and it has us increasing our technique by 1. So that's now at 7, and decreasing our imagination by 1. So that has gone back to 5. Let's hop over here. So this is the sign of the scarab. It says here it's associated with basically June and July, our world's equivalent of June and July, the 6th and 7th month of the year. Specifically, like from the 21st to the 21st. So it says here this sign is associated with Dedakamani, who is sometimes took the form of a scarab when he went amongst the ancient Golans, which I think is basically this world's version of the Egyptians. Those born under the sign of the scarab are good with their hands at making things, but surprisingly are not very imaginative, instead being better at repeating what some others have done first. They are builders, but not necessarily originators. And then, of course, you'll know just by looking at some of the other ones that a lot of these are very heavily influenced by the Mesopotamian and then, of course, Greek constellations. All right. Then next we have omens. So omens could be good, omens can be bad, but we don't know. we also have another option. We can roll as if our character is heroic, or roll as if our character is just a mundane person. If we roll mundane, there's a whole lot greater chance that we will not have any omens at all, because we're rolling a D100, and there's at least a 50% chance of us not getting anything. um, and yeah, but obviously, if we roll heroic here, we're just rolling a d20, which I'm going to go ahead and do heroic just to make things interesting. So it specifically says that we need to roll on this table, and then depending upon what we get, we might get just one omen, or might actually get more than one omen. We'll have to see. And I rolled a 14, which would be no omen. But that's not interesting. I'm going to at least try one more time to see if we can get something. Oh, and this time I rolled a 20, which is a rare omen. So it says we get to roll or choose once on the rare omen table, and then roll on this table again, ignoring a roll of d20. So since we rolled a 14 for the first one, I'm just going to say, okay, that means that we just get the rare omen, and that's it. So we're going to hop down here. This is the rare omen table. So we could have a spirit visit us during our birth. Hathlala's veil will descend over the sun. I think basically that's an eclipse. The wild hunt is raging nearby. Oh no, this is the eclipse. The sun eater tries to consume the sun. There's a flood or an earthquake that happens at the same time as our birth. There's a dragon seen moving in the earth nearby. There's a monster spotted nearby. We're born with a call, which, if you don't know what that is, basically means just that, like, basically when we were born, part of the amniotic sac, the sort of placenta sac, was stuck to our head as we came out. Which basically means that for some reason we're just fated to be a magician. A worm was spotted nearby, or the great shadow falls upon the moon, which of course would be a lunar eclipse. Speaking of calls, I just rolled an 8. So, yeah, you will be a magician. No, not necessarily, but anyway, they think there's a good chance that we will. So we get a +1 to our wisdom. So our wisdom is now at 8. We're a very wise person, apparently. We get a +1 to our will, so our will goes up to 7. Imagination goes back up to 6. Appearance goes down by 1, so that goes down to 5. And then we get second sight 2. So this is a gift. Okay, so here it is. It's right here. This is second sight. So it says, you can see into the other world, opening the hidden world of magic, spirits, and enchantments on your inspection. While this gift is active, you may look into the other world as though you were as though it were a part of the regular world around you, and you may add your gift level as a bonus to any roll that you make on awareness skill tests to see magical or invisible things or spirits. So basically, in some ways, it means that we can see dead people. But also it means that, like, we can, see and interact more easily with the spiritual, essentially. Anyway, yes, so now we come to where we are going to be taking a look at families and childhood. So family and childhood. So in this section, this is where we determine, like, how many siblings we have, determine our specific relationship with all of them. So needless to say, I'm not gonna skip this section, but I'm probably gonna do a lot of this off camera. And then also it suggests that, if we have someone who's very friendly with us, or someone who's definitely an enemy with us, then we might want to, roll that. And then of course we have our childhood. So I'll do family rolls real quick. And then we'll come back in a minute. Yeah, I didn't actually roll the family attitudes yet, because when I rolled to see how many siblings we'd get, I actually only just rolled 1. So we have 1 older sibling, and that's it. So I'm just going to go ahead and do all this on screen just to make things a bit more explanatory for everybody. So just to explain exactly what it to determine exactly how many siblings we have. The first thing they ask you to do is to roll a d10 to determine the number of siblings that you have. If you rolled anywhere between a 1 and a 7, then that's how many siblings you have. If you roll an 8, a 9, or a 10, then that means you're an only child. And then you roll a d10 again to determine exactly what um, order in what birth you are in order. Um, and if you rolled a 9 or a 10, that means you're a twin. So I rolled a 7, and since there's only one other sibling, I just decided even and odds, or like 1 through 5 would be we were born first. 6 through 10 would be they were born first. So they were born first. They're older than us. And then, so now it's time. We need to roll on the family attitudes. If we want, we can add a +2 to our parents just to make it less likely that our parents don't like us. But I don't want to do that. Let's make life interesting. Maybe something horrible happened. So we need to roll on this family attitudes 3 times. So for mom, I rolled a 9. That means our mom is an ally. So it says specifically you're very close to them, and they will almost always take your side whenever there are any family arguments. So now we'll roll for our dad. For dad, I rolled a 10, which means they like us even more. Family agent. So just to explain this one, it says that they think you're absolutely great and will do just about anything you ask, and will even sometimes actively seek to help you out even if you didn't ask. And then for our sibling, our older sibling, I rolled a 3, which means that they are a family skeptic. So the skeptic says that they distrust you for some reason, although they do not actively seek to undermine you. So the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and determine our character's childhood. So the first thing we need to do is, so this is basically just determining that this will go down here. The first thing that we need to do is just determine like the specifics of our childhood when it comes to like what was the biggest defining element, the biggest defining event or thing that influenced our character. So I'll go ahead and roll to see which table we should be rolling on. I roll a 4, so something bad happens. And here we go. 8. Homeless. Your childhood home was destroyed either by natural disaster or by the hands of man. You may not receive an inheritance or heirlooms during the life path or in the game. So basically, at some point, probably pretty late in our life, like when we were a teenager, like 12, 13, or like 13, 14, 15, maybe the inn that our mother ran burned to the ground. Or maybe she had some other profession that and the home that she did that profession in burned, and then that's why she's an innkeeper now. But basically, everything that our family had when we were younger has been completely lost. So yeah, we're not going to be getting any sort of inheritance or any sort of stuff from that. It does also say that in cases you can choose whether the cause was natural or man-made. If it was by human hands, then you gain an enemy and a hate the responsible party +2 binding. I'm just gonna roll a d10 evens and odds to determine exactly what's gonna happen here. With odd being basically that it was a natural disaster, and I rolled a 3. So yeah, we'll just say it was like a flood or an earthquake or something, and it completely wiped out our house. But yeah. So yeah, the next step would be for us to start rolling our previous experiences. This is something very similar to what you've seen when we were doing like the Traveler one, where we were rolling on this table here to determine the events for every single year from 16 onward. We're not actually. I'm gonna go ahead and put a cut in the video here. My recording has already hit an hour, and I haven't even started what is probably the longest and most complex part of this process. So what we're gonna do is this was all sort of like just the pre-work to get us to the actual life path that will be filled in this section, kind of like behind my head right now. Um, so yeah, we'll like I said, we'll put a cut in the video here. We'll start that process next time, and we're actually be diving into exactly what our occupation is and how, actually putting in the skill points that we need for the begin to start off with and all that stuff. Again, thank you all. This was our Artesia Adventures in the Known World. Um, the first half of the life path character creation system involved in that game. And I'll be seeing you all next time. Don't forget to subscribe, of course, to make sure and ring the notification bell to make sure you don't miss the next half of this system. Don't forget to rate your itch purchases or drive-through RPG purchases or wherever you buy your RPG of choice. Don't forget to check the link down below for the website where I got this form fillable character sheet for Artesia. And don't yeah, join us next time and have a good time. If you would like to show your support for this channel or for the Hessens County blog, in the description down below, you will find links to the channel coffee and also the itch store. Please feel free to take a look, and thank you for your support.